Hey, Jeannie Lynch coming back to you today. Welcome back to my channel. So excited for today's guest. You're gonna meet James. James is a healer for the healers. Well, what does that mean? Today we're diving into the topic of being a healer. And I think you will find if you ask a million healers out there, I almost guarantee they have these three things in common. The first thing is that at one point in their journey, they needed to be healed. That's what we all have in common. The second thing is that we understand that there's not one way to heal, but that there's many ways to heal, and we're never done and we're never healed. That's a great diving into that a little bit deeper today. And then the last thing is absolutely the hook for you to stay listening, and that is boundaries. Are we really helping people heal? Are we healing them, or are they healing themselves? Is it our job to do that? We're talking about boundaries too, and whether we take on other people's illnesses or their sickness. And then when is enough enough? When do we help? When do we guide? Woo, boundaries. That's the conversation today. James has a whole process, a great conversation around energetic boundaries. So stay listening and stay watching and find out why James calls himself a healer for the healers. It's coming up next. James, yay! So happy you're here today. We've actually spent some time together this week because we already did a healing together. And today, whether people are listening to us on the Intuitive Mindset podcast, my podcast, your podcast, or watching us on HD Color on YouTube, the first thing we want to acknowledge is the audience for their time and energy. So yay! So I just did your hook, and I'm so excited to get to know you a little bit better. I was on the receiving end of your work this week, healing another healer, right? So we're going to talk about that. And I wanted to get to know you a little bit deeper. I wanted to find out how you became a healer. And I want my audience to know, because most of my audience are healers. So this will be great. And we're going to talk about energetic boundaries. So without further ado, I'm going to get quiet. I want you to go into who you are, how you got where you are today, and what do you think your modality is to help others?
Aloha, everyone. My name is James Kawainui, Native Hawaiian Healer. My family goes back in Hawaii over 20 generations, and the easiest way for me to explain what I do and who I am is my lineage, my kupuna, and my ancestors were the shaman of my culture. And so in that understanding, we understood energy and we understood the world in a little bit different way than most people do. So the things that I do with people nowadays is I work with people that have chronic pain. And when we talk about pain or chronic pain, we're actually talking not just about the physical, but the emotional and the spiritual as well. And the other place where we all are is this place of really being in overwhelming stress. You know, just the world, the way it's designed nowadays, keeps us in that place. So how do we step beyond that overwhelming stress so that we can actually live productive lives with clarity? So how did I come to do this? I haven't been doing this all of my life.
Okay.
I'm the oldest of 8. I grew up on a coffee farm on the Big Island in Kona, on the west side of the Big Island. And, you know, I'm going to say that I lived a pretty unconscious life most of the time. And I had what people would consider an awakening when I was 42 years old. At the time, I was a senior executive in a multi-million-dollar a year company. I ran 3 departments. I had tons of people that worked for me. Life was pretty good, even though it was stressful. And one Friday evening, after a particularly long week at work, I had something happen to me that had never happened before, which is I had a clairaudient experience. And as I was sitting at home, I felt somebody go like this and tap me in the back of the head, and a voice that said, "It's time to go home." And I looked at my wife at the time and I said, "What the F are we doing here?" And she said, "I don't know." And so I went this is, I mean, I remember my old AT&T phone that was the flip phone, remember, from the 90s. But
Yes,
I went into the kitchen and I called my sister back in Hawaii and I said, "Who's living at the beach house?" And she said, "Nobody." And I said, "I'm coming home." So in that moment of hearing that voice, everything in my life changed.
So
And
question,
yep.
like we talk about these awakenings, what comes first, the chicken or the egg. Usually we're in a pretty rough spot. Something's happened that has pushed us to be a little awake. So were you already suffering from burnout and not being happy, or was this really as spontaneous as you're making it sound today?
It was spontaneous, but there were things that built up to that point. And one of the things that happened was 2 years before that eventful Friday evening, when I took this new position in my company, which is a promotion. I moved from the east coast of Florida. I was living right like 20 minutes away from Kennedy Space Center, so right on the ocean, and moved to the Midwest. I basically moved to the center of the state of Ohio. And so it was the first time in my life I had ever lived more than 30 or 40 minutes away from the ocean.
Got it.
And so over the course of those 2 years, even though I did a really good job and I focused really hard on the things that I was doing, it's funny because a few months before that happened, my wife at the time, she looked at me one day and she said, "I see your soul dying." And so I didn't know that was a harbinger of anything to come. But when that tapped in the back of the head and that voice said, "It's time to go home," it was almost like something clicked inside of me in that moment. And it was, okay, I can't do what I'm doing. So I literally, the next morning, I walk into my boss's office with a tank top and shorts and flip-flops on. And he was the president of the company. He was my friend, but he was also the president of the company. And I sat in front of him and I said, "Dave, I quit. I can't do this anymore." I stayed 2 more months because they tried to find a replacement. But my job I had such a crappy job. Nobody wanted my job. So I eventually left the company without having gotten a replacement for the work that I was doing.
Wow, that's important.
And I went back to Hawaii, and I have to say, I wish I had a way of showing you what the beach house looks like, because it wasn't really a house. It was a one-room shack with a tin roof, not even any windows, but it was screened all the way around it. But the ocean was my front door. And the Pacific Ocean. I went to sleep and I woke up looking and hearing the Pacific Ocean every night.
Literally back to home, where you
literally back to home. And it took 4.5 years to let go of that life, as all of these things were starting to come in, and there was like these things that were happening to me, and all of a sudden there was this understanding that I was supposed to work helping other people, and that was 21 years ago.
You got to stop there too, because I want to connect to you on that level.
Okay.
I left the corporate world, years in banking, finance, helping people start businesses. Came to Florida with an intention of just moving here and starting it all over again. I found my yoga mat, got quiet, and like 6 months later, my mother at the time was like, "Why aren't you working?" And I had no idea how burned out I was. And I think that's a good little segue too, because when you first started talking, you were talking about where we are now, with the pandemic for the last almost 2 years now. And let's just go back a little bit in time so we can start to open up this world of where we are today and the healing and how you help people, because where we are today is why we're coming together, right?
Right.
I want to go back 2 years ago when the plug got pulled. If we go back energetically to where we all were, we were all stressed out. We were all moving way too fast. We were all in a hurry. We were all running late. We were all already panic stricken in a sense, because the world was just moving, right? I won't go into politics, but we know where we were 2 years ago.
Right.
So then the plug got pulled and we all had to stay home, mask up, get quiet, wash our hands, dust the groceries off as they came to the door, look at the person who was delivering our food and make sure they were covered with a mask. I mean, we went into this whole aspect, but we also got quiet and with ourselves and stuff. And so part of this whole transition that we've all been on is really getting the time to dive deeper into where we really are as our person, right?
You're right. But I want to put a caveat inside of that. And the caveat is, if you give yourself the opportunity to do that, because not a lot of people did. A
Good point.
lot of people went into the panic. A lot of people went into the stress. They got lost inside of, oh my God, what if,
I think that is so. I have mentioned this in at least 5 other interviews that I've done, that the best thing for the healers or for the people that do what we do has been not the pandemic, but the ability to work remotely and have people be open to the idea.
Yeah.
I mean, no, I used to tell people I could do a reading over the phone. They're like, but I want to connect to my lost brother. I'm like, over the phone is fine. In fact, it's better, but I didn't want to tell them that, because there wasn't that body language and the people standing in front of you. We do different types of healing. So I love that now we're working with people all over the world, and that's why we're going to dive in. Now, you did jump off the island and ended up in Arizona in our conversation today. So did you leave Hawaii, the healer, and then started a new life in Sedona?
If we went back and I gave you a really quick timeline,
please.
2 weeks out of high school, I was in boot camp. So I went into the Navy. So I laugh and I tell people my first job out of high school was hunting Russian submarines back in the 70s. And from there, when I got out, my first wife lived in Florida. She was from Florida. So I moved to Florida to be with her. And that's where I was for 20 years. When I came back to the States, it was in 2009, and I had gone from going home in 2000. In 2004, I went to New Zealand for 3 months and ended up staying there for 5.5 years. And that's kind of where the way that I explain it is, that's where I got really cracked open. And I worked with a group of traditional Maori healers, the indigenous culture in New Zealand. And they found me basically, and they went, this is who you are. This is what you're going to do. This is how you're going to do it. And in 2009, July of 2009, I came home for a family reunion, which is where I found out my lineage, because I had a cousin that did our genealogy, and she literally handed me a book that had 16 generations of my ancestors in it.
Wow, what a gift.
It was truly a gift. It really was.
And perfect timing.
And it was, because the next week, my kupuna, my team, said, great, now that you know who you are and now you know what you're doing, you have to go back and live in the States again. So they sent me away from Hawaii, and I moved up here in 2009.
The part of that I really like to bring my audience, I like to dive a little bit deeper into not just talking about the healing, but tell me what you do, right? Because we do know as healers that there's a million different ways to be healed. And so we've kind of positioned you today as the healer for the healers. And this is where we get to open up the door to the energetic boundaries too. But give me some real basic principles to the people who found you and they taught, and tell me what you feel your modality is. And that might be a loaded question because we have so many tools that we use in our box, but just so that if somebody was watching this who was a healer, because that typically is my audience, they could go, oh, I need to talk to him because of when he said this. So tell us that part.
I'm going to preface all of this by saying this.
Okay.
We are all empathic. Okay. Everybody talks about empathic. Everybody talks about being sensitive but the reality is that every human being has empathic abilities. It depends on how we use them and what we use them for. Mm-hmm. So the way that I work with people is that because of the connection, and again, energy is energy. Everybody listening to this show understands that, right? And for the most part. And so it doesn't matter if you're in the same room or if you're on the other side of the world, the ability to sense and understand that energy. And so when I'm working with someone, the easiest way for me to explain it is as if I'm scanning their field to understand where their energy is. And my experience of that is where energy is blocked, there's pain. Where there's energy that is blocked, there's a story. Where energy is blocked inside of the body, there's disease and illness. So understand the energy and why it's not flowing. Understand the story. You'll understand why the pain is there. And that's when you start to create transformation.
Yeah, I love
so that. That's a quickest and the easiest way for me to explain Perfect. That. I basically, and this is the part about being empathic, I basically feel what people are feeling in their body as an experience in mine. What I've learned not to do is
Got
to
it.
take it on as my own. And
Got it.
that's where most people get tripped up
Can
doing
of
this work.
worms. Here we go. That's good. That's perfect too. Let me be your success story because I just did a session with you. So for those of you who are watching and wondering how he does this, we got on a call this week and James asked me, where in my body was I feeling? And it was funny because I remembered at the time my voice was completely jacked. You could hear it. I was raspy. I felt like I was 2 years ago when I first got diagnosed with Graves' disease. And I noted that to you when you asked. And then I noticed this feeling of being tight in my stomach. And at the time I had a spike coming out of my head on my way to
Right.
a migraine. So we did this work and you asked me and we had this beautiful conversation. We won't go into the detail of it. And by the time we finished, I wish it was recorded because I would love to show a little clip from beginning to end. By the time I hung up from our call, the spike had left, the gas had stopped, and my voice was clear as it is today. So,
You didn't even sound like the same person anymore.
and I didn't certainly feel like it. So, and then the next day happens, right? So let's dive into the thing that you believe right now is what you have to offer people. And let's talk about some things that you feel that when you identify like the boundary issue. You that was your buzzword when we were talking offline. You
Yeah.
really wanted that to come to the top and talk about. So this is your platform to do that. Let's go to that topic next.
For people that are practitioners, and when I talk about practitioners, some of the clients and the people that I work with are not just healing practitioners, but they're actually professional allopathic practitioners as well. Because it doesn't matter what kind of work that we're doing when we're interacting and working with people, in some manner, we are experiencing their energetic field as they are experiencing ours. And so that's really important to understand. And how do you do that without it not affecting you? And so over the course of the years, I've come up with this idea. My wife always says that it doesn't sounds. She said you need to find a sexy title for it.
So what is the name you have for this that you feel is, not sexy
Not
enough?
sexy. Protocols for energy hygiene
Okay,
is what I
explain that.
actually call it. It makes sense because there are protocols that we do, and hygiene energetically is no different than washing your hands when you're done working with, when a doctor works with a client, or
Right.
if we're doing things, or if we're helping someone, we wash our hands. I mean, if COVID didn't teach us anything, it taught us wash your hands more,
Yeah.
right? And so this idea about protocols for energetic hygiene came about mainly because when I started really diving into the healing work, I was looking at all my teachers, and I was sitting with some very old Hawaiian masters in Hawaii, when I was still in Hawaii, and I was looking at them and I was watching how they were doing the work. And the old paradigm of healing, and that's why I call it the old paradigm of healing, is that the healer will come, the person will come to them, and they will remove the energy from that person so they feel better. But most of the time what happens is they take the energy on and then go, oh well, I can diffuse it, or I can transmute the energy myself. And I was looking at that because the people that I was working with at the time, they were in their mid 60s. Very few of them that were past their mid 70s. And health wise, they were decimated. Their bodies had taken a lifetime of this work of taking on other people's energies, and they were beat up. They really were. And I was looking at that from somebody that was in their late 40s, turning 50, knowing this is going to be the work that I was going to do for the rest of my life, and going, wow, James, that doesn't make for a very long career if you do it the way they're doing it.
So stop so my audience can catch up to the idea of empathic or sensitive. Are they the same? Somebody who has a high sensitivity or is emotional, a little bit more emotional. I'm thinking of my sister Sue, God love her. She she looks at through her eyes like I could spend one day looking through her eyes. I can't imagine what I would see because she just sees the beauty in the world.
Mhm.
But she's so sensitive. So if somebody tells her a sad story, she's crying. And then two
Right.
days later, she has that element. She's sick. she she's had what that person was telling her about. And so let's go there. Is sensitive, empaths, you said everybody is, the more sensitive, the less sensitive, the hard nosed, the good boundary people. Peel that back for us, James.
Okay, so I'm gonna answer this the easiest way possible, and hopefully that'll make the most sense. Okay, when I'm talking to people about this, even with the people that I work with, I say there's a difference between sympathy and empathy.
Mm-hmm. Brene
Okay,
Brown. Yep.
sympathy is I feel your pain. Empathy is I understand your pain. And as soon as we go into feeling other people's pain, we are going to have the experience inside of us. So we've opened the door, and there's a lot of pieces that come inside of this, right? Because most of our relationships, and this might be controversial for some people, most relationships are built on pain, on our association
Connection.
and our relationship to pain. Okay. Because if I'm sitting someplace and my best friend Sue is telling me about her day and she's saying this happened and this and this and this and all these things happening, even though I'm listening to her and I'm wanting to be compassionate and listen, there's a place inside of my brain that's going through all my files to find those similar instances and things that have happened in my life so that I can relate. And
Connect.
as soon as I do that, though, then I'm feeling and experiencing their pain inside myself,
Got
even
it.
though I'm not wanting to.
So help my listeners. What's the appropriate, or I know it's not going to be one cut and it's all done, but what's the antidote to that? It's
The,
just, yeah, help us.
the antidote is if I can stop and instead of, gosh, another easy way to explain this. When I stop reacting to the world, I stop giving my energy away. When I stop giving my energy away, then I have an opportunity to not connect or connect. Most of us are so wide open that whatever we see and feel in the world just literally gloms onto us.
Got it.
And so then we're feeling the collective. I'm feeling my friend. I'm feeling my sister. I'm feeling the neighbor. When
The
when
news.
I mean, when I travel, we actually feel the neighborhoods change from street to street. Sometimes because we'll drive down the next street and go, wow, energy just changed. And my wife, because she's also understands this, she goes, yeah, what happened? And so we are constantly being bombarded by energy outside of us. But if we're here and all the energy is here, I can't do anything about it. If the energy is here, literally, I create a field of energy around me.
Got it.
Then at least I'm starting to recognize the energy that's happening before it gloms onto me. I guess I can use that word again.
Got it.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, oh my God. Complete sense. I did a video, I'll tag it here because I would love for you to watch it and give me your feedback. It was all on compassion. And it's everything I think you're saying about, standing. I have this exercise where I stand behind people and my hands on them, but only in love and support, not to take it on. And really thinking, what does this person need? You know what I mean? Because I'm not fixing it, solving it,
Right.
taking it away or any of that. And just letting the person be where they are. And so I love that. And then I'm also going to go back to our session together. You had me step into that beautiful protected prism the other day. Why don't you share with my audience that little tip that you had me do? Because I've just been keeping myself in that beautiful little space and I want my audience to receive that benefit.
Basically, what Jeannie's talking about is that we create a resonant field of energy around us. The process that she and I went through, and I will just, and we didn't even talk about this, but if people want to have that experience, I actually have a meditation that I can share with people.
Well, let's tag it then.
Okay.
Can I do that? Is it a YouTube and I can put the link here?
It's actually an audio file for a meditation, but I can send it to you. I'll
We
send
would love
that to you.
that.
So that we
Yay.
can put
A
that.
free
we can put that
gift.
together.
Say
Yeah.
thank you, James.
But yeah, my free gift.
Love
But
it.
what we did and what we were talking about is stepping inside of this field of energy that I create. And the field of energy that I create, the download I got from the team when I started doing this is they said, it's your own crystal egg. And so, you've heard people talk about putting bubbles around you, and we
Roses.
don't even have time to talk about armor and protection and everything else like that. That's kind of another conversation. But basically, when you step into this egg, what you're doing is you're creating a space around you, immediately around you, that says, this is my space and my space only. And nobody else is allowed to step into this space unless I give you permission. And that's the key to that, because now what's happening is, instead of me feeling everybody around me, everybody literally is like here.
Got
And
it.
so instead of having to feel, I become aware of the things that are happening around me. I become aware of the people that are around me. And for me, my idea of compassion is, when I become aware of where you are and the things that have been happening to you in your life and the circumstances that put you in this particular situation in this moment, what it does is it helps me as a practitioner, because I go, got it. Now I understand where you are. Now I can see how I can help you, or if there's a way forward for you, so that you can step out of that, or you can, if you want to say heal, I don't like to say that, but get better. Let's just say that.
Transform. Yeah.
Transform.
Yeah. Love it. Integrate. I love that. Wow, we're having such a good conversation. Can we just spend the rest of the afternoon talking? Let's keep going, because I think this is exactly what I wanted it to be. So thank you,
Right.
James, for your time. Let's go to your ideal client. Who do you want to work with? How do you want to make the world better? Go to that space and describe that aspect so that we can see if we line up.
My experience is that women are far more ready to do this transformational work than men.
Okay.
And so as a result of that, I would say that my ratio of men to women that I work with is somewhere around 85% to 15%.
Do you
So
want that to change? Just
I would
curious.
love for that to change. When
Yeah.
men show up in my life, I celebrate them.
Yeah, I would, because I would certainly like to work with more men, and I know men that are open to this, but I would like to do that too. So I like that you're saying that, because they're there. They all need the work, right? There can't be just women out there who need work, right? So
And you and I can have a whole other conversation about that, because there's in the work I've come to an understanding about why that happens, and has to do a lot with our genetic makeup, and how we're showing up in the world.
very fascinating, fascinating. So the best way to connect and work with you, what would that be?
The best way is to send me an email, and just start the conversation. I offer free 30-minute consultations to anybody. If you haven't figured it out yet, I love to talk.
Love that about you. So I
And
know we met on Facebook through a group and another group and another group, and we're getting ready to do another project together. So I love that connection. So I love this. So James, when I said to you today what I wanted to talk about, and we connected online, and you were hoping that something would get said, have we covered what you felt was important in this interview today, or have I missed it?
if I was going to put one last thing that we say to everybody today, I would say this. When we start to understand that everything that's happened and is happening in our life is because of the choices that we've made and the consequences that came because of it, when we start paying attention to that and taking responsibility for that, that's when our lives change. And I know that doesn't have anything to do with energetic boundaries, but I think it's something really important, because we go then from being the victim to understanding that I have way more control in my life than I thought I did.
And we can be healed through ourselves, through that awareness. You can't heal what you're not aware of, right?
Right.
And every day's a new day. I love that. So that just opens up the door too to kind of where we are in the world right now. We're hopefully coming out of this. We still have some healing we need to do, but deeper than that, we know that this is part of this ascension that we've all been on. We've been talking about the shift. It was like this code word years ago. You know what the shift is, right? We don't say the shift anymore. We talk about ascending and where we are in the world today. This pandemic was absolutely, I think we all agree, part of that.
It
And
was it was the,
yes,
it was forcing everybody to go internal.
Yeah.
And that was our opportunity to go internal,
Yeah.
to stop being distracted by the world around us, and to really dive
Connect.
into the inner work.
Yeah. And their internet was part of that because now we can touch and reach people all over the world. So I know you and I are getting ready to do this Ascension Go Giver network with all, we're bringing all these healers together to get to know each other and help each other and support each other and and share our clients if you want to have it that way. And you had mentioned when I was talking to you about it that, God, years ago, it was like there was only 100 people out there who needed to be healed and everyone was waiting for them to step into their shop, right? So that's changed.
That's changed.
Yeah.
And the thing that I see change, and in relationship to my helping other practitioners, right, is that the reality is that there's not enough of us available. There are more people looking for help than are people that are helping right now. And so if my part inside of that is keeping the practitioners that are doing the work healthy so that they can show up in the world, then I've done what I was supposed to do. That was something that was given to me as a responsibility, I would say 15 years ago, where they said, your job is to make sure that the people are doing the work can do the work and they stay healthy.
I love it.
When they said that to me, I was like, oh man, that's kind of a tough assignment. But I take that to heart now, and I take that with a huge amount of responsibility, because if you're not working, I'm talking to you today.
Yes. Yeah.
If you're not working, then you are robbing somebody else of the opportunity to heal and to transform and to step into a greater understanding of themselves. So get to work.
I love that. I have to share, I always felt my responsibility was taking the woo-woo into corporate America and telling people you don't have to leave your corporate job to become a healer. That's what, interestingly enough, that's what we did, right? But we need the lawyers, we need the bankers, we need the doctors. God, do we need the doctors, right? Who are seeing this aspect of spirituality, whatever you want to call it, Buddha, God, awake consciousness. We need to be in those jobs that need this to be expanding. And that's really the shift, don't you think?
Those are my ideal clients, actually. Okay. I work with corporate executives, and I work with people that have gotten to a certain place of success in their lives and still seeing an emptiness inside of themselves. And so this place of stepping into that next place of being aware in what I'm doing.
Yeah, I love that.
And so those are my ideal clients. So most of my clients are very top level corporate executives, and not to say that whoever comes and needs wants to have the work done, then I'm going to turn them away. But those are the people that I love working with, because they in some ways are huge influencers for a lot of people.
Love that. Love that. And that's really what we are. The leaders are the influencers. And if you can influence others to follow you, then that's our job. I love that. Well, guess what? I think that means something. I think we're sliding into rapid fire. So are you ready?
Awesome.
Music's keyed up, the fireworks are going, one word answers, and let's do this. It's my chance to say real quick, thank you so much for your time twice this week. I truly do appreciate you, and I'm looking forward to working with you, continuing to work with you. Are you ready?
Yes.
Okay. Favorite movie is?
Forrest Gump.
Oh my God, love Forrest Gump. If you were going to change the world today, the world needs what in order to be changed?
More love.
Pet peeve. We all have them. Okay, James, come on. Tell us, what's your pet peeve?
My pet peeve is unconscious people.
So I can tell you're peeved. There's some people out there, right, to work on. And then the last thing is, what are you doing when you're absolutely experiencing joy?
I'm sitting with someone else. In other words, I'm sharing my gift.
I love that. I love that. Hey, everybody, if you want to check out James, all his links are in the description below. You can find us both. We're going to ask you to follow him, connect with him, leave messages and comments below. He will answer them as this video and this podcast go up. We will look forward to serving you in the future as we ascend, right? So Thank you, everybody. Bye, James. Thank you.
Life is like a box of chocolates. You never know which one you're gonna get.